Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, even afternoon, guys. Welcome to Fine Print. This is our weekly poetry analysis show where we take a look at a poem that you have sent us and we analyze it. We're just taking a look at what's going on. We're looking at your speaker, we're looking at your structure, we're looking at things like your titles, your form, structures you got going on, anything that we think is salient to write in some poetry. And of course, as we go through this is a team effort. So if you notice some things about the poem yourself, you can let us know. We would love to get your own thoughts. You agree with what you're saying, you disagree. But this is not a workshop. We're more just trying to see what is actually just happening in the poem. What are some things that stand out to us? And this time we're going to be focusing on tension. And we're really excited because today we are looking at work that's coming in an upcoming chapbook from a button in the way. Bottle Cap Press. They Drink with the Sun from Amanda Nicole Corbin. Give it up for them. Getting their work out here. Upcoming chapbook. Be released soon, discussing the theme of alcoholism and things like that. We also are very excited because we're working on getting you an actual little feature. I'm featuring this poet in the near future. So keep an eye out for that. But let's take a look at what this poem actually looks like. And we're going to be specifically looking at this poem through the lens of tension. I'm particularly interested in finding ways that this poem is exploring character dynamics to add tension between all the people that appear. What are some of the things that I think are contributing to that? But before we even get to any of that discussion, let's actually just read the poems. This is Cocktail Onions by Amanda Corbin. Give the Gibson drink its purpose. Let the her get drunk while he sobers water. A pickled pearl shuckled from the 1900s, where a man sits at a bar sketching finely lined women with ink like watercress sprigs, cupping curves so she may be voluptuous, but not vulgar, respectable, but contained. The bite of a red onion extruded from her broiled tomato lips. Hers is the blurry drink that tells the bartender more. His, a small floating son of control, but she knows garnish all too well to take up keyring arms, don poison coated toes. Let the man relish in the reality that the only way he could get her would be to subdue her. He holds his spurious martini like an open door that she will walk through, memorizing every exit, tracing her fingers along every wall, and tucking every silver knife into the back of her dress. Again, giving us up to Amanda Corbin, getting this poetry out here in the upcoming collection. All very, very exciting things we're looking forward to. Excited for them. I think they're actually traveling right now. Okay. So my goal is especially to highlight tension. So my first question for you is, based on what you heard there, or based on if you're seeing the poem, what you see, what are some things that can already be adding tension? And this actually wasn't something I was going to highlight originally when I started this stream, but something that's already just kind of jumping out to me that's adding tension is like I said before, I like to start by just giving the eye test. And I think that visually there are some things going on that from a reader's perspective can make things feel a little bit uncomfortable. And this has to do a little bit with space. We are pretty confined. We get these pretty large boxes of text, right? So it's not just one text, which I think in some ways is actually pretty fitting, right? We have two characters. Our two main characters are kind of coming out, and we got two dominant stanzas. And these stanzas are relatively long. And I think, and this is also in contrast with a title that's very short. In addition to that, just look at the line breaks and the line lengths. There's a lot happening here. We're never really balanced, even though we're talking about a poem of 2 stanzas. Are they the same length? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So first stanza is 10, unless I miscounted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we got 10, and then we got a sonnet. We don't actually have a sonnet. Anytime I see 14, that's what immediately kind of jumps out to me, though. It was time to explore it. And I'm going to, assuming again that the poem is formatted the way it's supposed to be. So already we have we're unbalanced. And in some ways, it feels even more unbalanced because we have an even number. So it's intentionally unbalanced. It's intentionally bottom heavy. So just doing that is already adding tension. We are dealing with these very irregular line lengths that are also contributing to that. So for instance, ending on like a preposition with the with, it's like finally lined women with, and then the line just ends right there. So ending on prepositions forces us to jump forward. We see that later too. It's like there's a line that says, but not vulgar, comma, respectable, but. That's a nice play. So like starting and ending with the same word. Okay. But the ending on the word but again forces you as a reader to jump forward more. We have a lot of momentum things that are sending us there. Then we get even like, for instance, some one word lines, but also operating in the same poem where we get really long lines that are just so long that they almost kind of have to continue to the next line. So, for instance, we had the line, hers is the blurry drink that tells the bartender more. His, then we get the line break, a small line break. So again, that super long line is just so long that it kind of has to continue. And that actually happens several other times too. We get the relish and the reality that the only way he could get her. That line is also very, very long. And then followed by later on, like an open door that she will walk through. And then the last case where this kind of happens, where we're just kind of running out of real estate, is the exit tracing her fingers along every wall and tucking, followed by every silver knife. So just a lot of things going on in terms of line lengths. We get some very short lines. So for instance, would be to. We get a short line, subdue her. That's on a line by itself. What else do we see? Okay. Give me one moment. Until I pressed the wrong button. Okay. Other things that are happening that you see that are adding tension just from a structural point of view, feel free to let us know. Okay. I'm going to reset my marker really quick. Just one moment. Okay. But those, again, were not the things that I specifically had wanted to go over in terms of tools for tension. Some of the things that especially stood out to me, I want to talk about some things that I think are helpful from a character perspective. So, first of all, how many main characters do we have in this piece? Well, not a whole lot, right? We got I had it for a moment, now I lost it. There we go. Okay, I can use this. We got give the gifts and drink its purpose. Let the her. So we have the her get drunk while he. So we have a her and we have a he. We have a she. We have a he. We have the man who sits at a bar, sketching finely lined women. Okay, so you have a man kind of just watching women. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like to me he's like looking at people around him and kind of like drawing them, but maybe they're not based on the people around him. I'm not entirely sure. I'm just going to highlight all the places where we're seeing characters. He sobers, let her get drunk. A man sits at a bar sketching fine lined women. She may be voluptuous. Okay. The bite of a red onion extruded from her brought to my lips. Hers is the drink that tells the bartender. Okay, so we actually do have another character with the bartender. More. Then we get his small flame control, son of control, but she knows. Taking up arms, let the man relish in reality. The only way he could get her be to subdue her. He holds his spurious martini that she opened doors she will walk through, tracing her fingers. Okay, so our central characters again are just the he and the she. So this is already one way you can start adding some tension to a piece. Two characters. Okay, two characters. Just by placing them into a poem, you're automatically starting to explore some sort of relationship dynamic, especially in the context of a poem or a story. Because the story is all about tension and resolving an issue and things like that. If everything's going perfectly, we probably don't have a poem and we probably don't have a story. There's some sort of problem. So already that's being sort of implied by everything here. The dynamic of the relationship is also very interesting too, right? So you have this guy. What is he doing? He is pretty much just watching, sketching. It's like it's interesting, like just kind of seeing the control dynamics and the power dynamics. Because so what power does the man have here? So he sobers. What does he do? He sits. The man sits at the bar. Okay. And what is he doing? He's sketching. So he's drawing. He's creating a world. Right? He's sketching. He is in complete control of the things that he's sketching. He, in fact, has a floating sun of control. We see that later on. Hers is the blurry drink that tells the bartender more. His, a small floating sun of control. That's what he's drinking. He's drinking a small floating sun of control. Let the man relish in the reality. So he's enjoying something. That the only way he could get her would be to subdue her. So now we're getting almost a sense of violence. So the man is capable of that. He holds his martini like an open door. Now, I get a little bit confused there's some places where I get a little bit confused by pronouns. So, and this is not related to our discussion, but I would love to know your thoughts on this and see if you have similar points of confusion, and maybe you can, and if you don't, maybe you can clarify for me. Places where I get a little bit confused. He holds his martini like an open door that she will walk through, and then we get this memorizing. I don't know who's doing the memorizing. I don't know if it's he holds his martini, memorizing every exit, or is it that she will walk through memorizing? So I get lost on knowing where's the memorizing. Is it going towards the he or the she? Because especially early on, we say that this guy's sketching, right? So then even later, tracing her fingers, these participles, I get really confused on the participles because I could see arguments for either the man or for the woman. And some of that ambiguousness also is creating some tension too, right? Because trying to explore those dynamics, because I think both of them can be possible, so it could be the he memorizing all the exits, tracing her fingers, tucking the knife into the back of her dress. It could be him doing those things. Or it could be the she. She's memorizing the exits. She's tracing her fingers. She's tucking the knife into the back of her dress. And both of those interpretations obviously have very different meanings. And so I think, intentionally or not, that's also adding to the tension. Trying to figure out who's doing what. Who we kind of lose track of who has power in this last part because of the ambiguity with the participles. But again, that just could also just be due to my poor reading. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are. So ambiguity is one technique that can actually add a layer of tension to a piece. You start interpreting it different ways. Um, Another thing, so I mentioned before, I don't know if you guys are familiar. There's a craft book series called The Art of, and they have all different ones of like they have like the art of recklessness. There's the art of the line, I think it's called. I forget who wrote that one. I have it on the shelf over there. Um, and then there's one called The Art of Subtext. And that one is by Charles Baxter. I've mentioned it in previous videos before. And one of the things that he talks about, granted, it's been a little while since I read it, but one of the things that he mentioned I think is really interesting is, and he's a fiction writer, to be clear, but one of the things he mentions is that if you want to add tension, one thing you immediately can do is you stick characters in a confined space. And there's a lot of confining going on. One, just in a poem. A poem by in and of itself is a confined space. We in this case we've literally just the space of two stanzas. But in addition to that, there's also this space of the bar and the bartender. Okay, we put both of these characters into a very limited, um, squared off area, and in addition to that, there's this sense that there's a stranger aspect. So it sounds like they don't really know each other. And so just by exploring that sort of relationship dynamic in a tiny space is another technique that you can do to add tension if you're trying to make a scene feel a little bit more intense. It feels like the stakes are higher. It's a lot more suspenseful. Limit the space. I mean, that's something that you see, like for instance, like horror movies do all the time, right? Think of like the original Alien. They're just on that spaceship. What about this spaceship? Well, it's dark. It's got these narrow hallways that you can't see around corners very easily. There's lots of dark spaces. So like there's this sense of confinement. And not only that, you're in there, they're literally just like flying through space. It's like you can't even leave your ship. So you're literally trapped there. And it is very kind of similar things with poems. So that can be a strategy you can employ if you have some characters that you want to see what they do, um, in a way where the stakes are a little bit higher. That's something you can do, is put them with each other in a very confined area. So that's just a technique that you can do to add some tension. And I think that's what's really happening here. Um, Other things I see going on that I think can contribute to the tension, I think also just the perspective of the poem is very interesting. So we're not committing to a first person view. We're not committing to a view just of the man or the woman. We kind of all go between them. Although it could also be just kind of like an omniscient, or it could be someone that's just observing everything happen. I think another way you can add tension is exploring control and power dynamics. I'm curious what you guys think in this poem. Who exhibits the most control? And let me switch. Okay, I can do this. So my question is again, who is exhibiting the most control? And where maybe just to put it even looser, where do you see control? Well, it's very interesting that in that first line is what? Give. We're starting with a command. Give the gifts and drink its purpose. And then we follow that with another command, right? It's like let. There's other things that are happening. Going back also to the tension and using a confined space, another thing you can do to add tension, and something that in general is happening here is time. Instead of dragging things across, massive kind of like swaths of time, put everything into a single moment. Slow things down. That's what you look at fiction. What do they do? They can spend 2 pages describing a single second, right? So you have the power to slow things down, um, through writing, and that's kind of what happens here to a degree. So, like, while he sobers water, a pickled pearl shucked from the 1900s, where a man sits at a bar sketching. This is another place where I did get a little bit confused time wise. So I would love to know what your guys' thoughts are. So it says a pickled pearl, excuse me, shucked from the 1900s, where a man sits at a bar sketching finely lined women. So this is a part I wasn't sure if I'm supposed to stay in the 1900s or if the 1900s is just in reference to the pearl. That's another thing. I was like, okay, because I could see this poem being in like the early, the 1900s, but I could also see it now. So it's modern day, where a man sits at a bar sketching finely lined women with ink like watercress bigs, cupping curves. So this is another place where you get some of the tension too. So we're getting tension through like kind of like moral tension, kind of. It's like we have the sprigs cupping curves. So, he's sketching this thing that if you take some of these elements away, it starts becoming vulgar, literally, as expressed. But because he's adding these sprigs of watercress to make the women that he's drawing voluptuous but not vulgar. So again, we have this relationship. We have this tension in terms of kind of like moral expectations and behavior. Respectable, but contained. There's also in a similar vein, we get that kind of idea continuing in the second stanza. Hers is the blurry drink that tells the bartender more. So we have this sense of you control, desire to lose control. Her having the drink, that indicates also that she wants more to drink. And the other tension too, another one I see is just between characters. Again, going back to the speaker, whoever the speaker of the poem is. So speaker makes claims like this. So hers is the blurry drink that tells the bartender more. His a small floating sun of control, but she knows garnish all too well. So we get into questions about who is the narrator, who is the speaker, can we trust them? Is this thing about but she knows garnish all too well? Is that a fact about the she, or is that just a projection from the speaker onto the she? How what makes me trust this speaker to convey information that is true? I mean, you literally have a speaker that's speaking on behalf of two other characters. Explaining motives, explaining history, and things like that. But how much can we actually trust them? So I think that's just kind of another layer of tension that's also added to the poem as well. So by trying to maintain that sort of distance, but the choice of speaker here, I think, is very interesting. There's this distancing, but also this very internal kind of thought process going on as well. All right, so that's just some things that stand out to me with regards to tension that I thought were really interesting in this piece. I also identified for you some points of confusion that I had. So again, if you want to let me know, what do you think about that ending? Do you think that those INGs, so like memorizing every exit, tracing her fingers, tucking every silver knife, do you see that as the she, or do you see that as the he? And anything that you think could justify that, I would find that to be very interesting. Also, just in terms of time, do you think modern day? Do you think the 1900s is extending us to the past for everything? Let me know your thoughts on that. I want to thank Amanda for letting us take a look at the piece. We greatly appreciate that. Again, this is coming out in this collection here, They Drink with the Sun by Amanda Nicole Corbin, coming out very, very soon. Get your purchases, add it to your cart, things like that. Check out the collection, and also keep an eye out for us, and when we do a small little launch thing. Also want to highlight that for those of you looking for some time to write, tomorrow we're going to be doing some Lo-Fi Poet. What happens in Lo-Fi Poet is we show up right around 9:00 tomorrow night, and then for an hour we listen to some lo-fi beats. You can put them on mute or you can listen with us. and we write poems to prompts. And then if you want to share your poem, you can do that. So again, that's going to be tomorrow at 9 p.m. So basically, right around this time, we'll be right around wrapping up, more or less. Check it out live on the channel. So again, youtube.com/at the verses poetry. Thank you guys for spending some time with me analyzing some work. I greatly appreciate you. I will see you all later. Have a good day. Have a good night. Good afternoon. And thank you again for watching. Versus Fine Print. Take care.